Welcome to the show. We've got a great show today. This is actually kicking off a series I'm doing, 3 knives in 3 days. We're going to see how it goes. I've seen somebody do like 5 knives in 5 days before, but that was an experienced knife maker. I'm pretty new to this, and it's going to be a challenge to get it all done. So some of you will remember this machete from a few weeks ago. This is a $5 machete I reviewed from Harbor Freight. I had some issues with it. As you can see, the handle came loose. That was probably the main issue. But the steel doesn't seem like terrible steel, at least not on the one that I got. So I decided, might as well make a knife with it. Now it's going to be a little tricky because this is some type of stainless steel, and I'm not planning on reheat treating it and all of that. I did temper it just to make sure that it's soft enough for me to do some work on it. But beyond that, I'm just going to go with the heat treat that they did at the factory. It seems to hold an edge well, and so I'm just going to go with it. This seemed like a perfect opportunity to do an 8-inch chef's knife. I'm going to call this a gift for my wife. She just had a birthday, and I got her a couple of little things, but if this works out, I think it would make a really nice addition to the gifts that I got her. Now, during this 3 knives in 3 days challenge that I'm putting myself through, I'm probably not going to be doing quite as much narration just because I want to keep the video editing time kind of down to a minimum so I can really focus on producing quality in the knives. But in any case, I think most of the action here is going to be self-explanatory. I'll probably keep almost all of the video that I shoot. I'll just run it fast so that you can get a sense of what I'm doing kind of each step of the way. It's been a while since I used this belt sander in the bench vise. I've really been enjoying my 1x30 belt grinder, but I ran into some issues with it. I guess maybe on a knife this big, it's nice to have a larger belt. So you'll see me kind of go back and forth between the two. I haven't done a knife of this kind of a style with this large of a blade before. So there's a lot of experimentation that kind of went into this. I debated whether I wanted to try to put like a real discrete grind line on this knife. There were a couple of issues with that. As you can see, part of the original hollow grind that was on the machete made it into the cutout of this knife. And so in the process of removing that and taking everything down to a flat grind, that grind line started to wander a little bit on me. So in the end, I decided I would kind of soften that line and give the bevel a little bit of a convex profile. I think that works out with this knife anyway because it's actually a pretty thin blade to begin with. It's about a 1/16 inch. And I think it's fine to have a convex bevel on there. Drilling holes in this material was really difficult. Part of the problem was that I'm using a bit here that I've used before, and it was probably already going dull. But I had so much trouble getting through this that I decided, on the handle part here, I would heat it up, temper it back a little further than it was already tempered, and then come in and try to drill. And I guess that worked a little bit, but in the end it was just really tough getting through. But with a little time and a little patience, I got through there. And I was kind of thinking about doing 3 pins to begin with, but once I realized how difficult it was to get through, I decided 2 was enough. Here I'm using a scrap of, I believe it's walnut for the knife scales. I've used this method before where I cut out the shape and then split it in half the long way to make the 2 scales. But I think I might have to invest in a bandsaw soon, because with the scroll saw, it's really hard to get a good straight cut, and I wind up doing a lot of cleanup to get a nice flat surface on the scales. Here, of course, I'm just drilling the holes in the scales, getting them lined up so that I can put the pins through when we do the glue up. And might as well put a couple holes in the table while I'm at it. Now, before I do the actual glue up, I'm cleaning up the top of the scales where they're going to meet the ricasso part of the knife. Because if I don't do it now, it's going to be really tricky to get that part later without scuffing up the blade. Here I'm using a little trick that I saw on Simple Little Life. I'm actually going to link to his channel. He is an excellent custom knife maker and he makes great YouTube videos. I often wind up making just a huge mess when I'm doing the glue up. And I noticed that whenever he does it, he kind of makes a little pad with masking tape and uses that to do his mixing and applying the glue. So there it is, all clamped up. Now this was a fast setting epoxy, so I only left that for a couple of hours. The only thing I really had left to do is clean up the scales and sharpen up the blade. I decided not to get too crazy with contouring the scales. I kind of like the angular look on a kitchen knife. So I'm really just knocking the corners down a little bit and then cleaning up the surface of the scales with some sandpaper to get them ready for finishing. And for finishing, I'm just using linseed oil. In a few days, I'll probably do another application of this, but for this project, since we're doing 3 knives in 3 days, I figured 1 coat was enough for now. For the actual edge, I'm using a worn 120 grit belt, and I'm dipping the blade in water pretty much constantly to keep it cool. And then I'll finish that up on the stones here. Well, it cuts paper. Hopefully it'll work in the kitchen. That's about all I have time for tonight. Appreciate you watching. Give me a like, and be sure to check back tomorrow. I'll have another knife, and the day after that, I'll have a third one. And if you're watching this in the future, this will be part of my 3 knives in 3 days playlist, so be sure to check that out. Well, thanks again for watching. Have a wonderful day or night or afternoon, whatever it is, wherever you are, and we'll see you in the next video.